where production meets artistry. Welcome to the Producer Evolution podcast, where we talk about everything and anything music and recording related with your hosts, Corey and Felipe.
My name's Corey Snap, and I'm joined here with my cohort, Felipe Miller.
What's up?
So in this episode, we're going to talk about keeping up momentum. It's easy to get distracted these days and sort of lose your way when it comes to making progress with your music project. So I thought we could start out more big picture items, like mindset, distractions, things like that, and then drill down into the specifics when it comes to actually making music and get more granular with all of that. So Felipe, I guess you were doing some research in forums and Facebook groups and stuff, and momentum seems to be a big issue with a lot of producers. Is that right?
Oh yeah, for sure. Even with myself, I kind of realized I have that issue too. Because you'll get started on a song and you're like, oh, cool. And then let's say you take a break for like a second and you don't get back to it. That's why we all have, like those 600 songs that you never finish, and you release one out of 600 songs, or you just don't feel motivated to, it's like get through it, or it's just extra work and you just don't really feel like doing the extra work, to make your songs get to that next level. So that's why I thought I would do some research, see what kind of stuff people would benefit from this podcast, just listening to that and help, keep that momentum going forward.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. So I have quite a few items here, myself, that help me, and I feel that they're all equally important. The more of these that you implement in your own life, the better your musical output's going to be. So first thing I have is just keeping your body and mind healthy, exercising, eating well, stay away from processed foods. If you eat like crap, you're going to feel like crap, and you're probably not going to want to be productive in the studio. Other than that, get outdoors, get some sunlight, get out in nature. I like to go for bike rides, and I mix it up so that it's not always the same route or trail. Kind of keep me on my toes. I definitely feel, like re-energized when I come back, from being out in nature and get back into the studio. So
it's actually kind of interesting because like when I go on like a bike ride and stuff, after I'm working on a song, what I'll do is I'll export the song and listen to it on repeat when I'm biking for like 30 minutes to an hour. And during that time, you just get all these nice ideas for the song that you wouldn't have thought of on the studio, which I feel like is a great way to stay in shape and like get some progress on music. Yeah, super productive. Combining those, that's a great idea. I might start implementing that myself, actually. Thanks for that. Yeah, no problem.
Next thing I have, and I think you can relate with this one as well, is organizing your environment and organizing your samples and presets.
Oh, yes. 1,000 times yes.
So, I recently did this myself. First of all, organizing your environment. I try to keep my studio pretty clean so I don't have just, a bunch of crap all scattered everywhere. I feel like if your space is cluttered, your mind can be cluttered. So, definitely having like a clean studio environment. And then as far as the organizing your samples and presets, I'd recommend spending, even if it takes you a week or multiple days or whatever, to just go through all of your sample packs, all of your presets, and just organize things, like separate, the way I have it. For instance, I have like a drums folder, and then within the drums folder, I have all the claps that I would use in a project or in a folder, all the snares, all the kicks, they all have their own folder. And I just spent multiple days going through all of my sample packs, and, 90% of the kicks in a sample pack I probably wouldn't use. So I just take that 10% and I put it in in an organized folder. So yeah, when I want to work on something, it's like I have all the kicks I would use, everything that I could see myself using in a project. I have quick access to it. So that's definitely sped up my workflow, and I can come into the studio and just get started in a matter of seconds, between having templates, which we can talk about in a minute, and all those samples and presets organized.
Oh yeah, I remember when I started organizing my samples, it was like midnight when I started, and it was like 7, 8 a.m. when I finished, because I had like 300 gigs of samples. And I was kind of in the same boat kind of you. Like I have like 1,000 like different kick samples, and I only use like 1% of them. However, I don't organize those kicks. I just know by memory like what kick sounds like what. And so I'll be like, oh, I need the Somatics House Kick 9 for this, or I need like this kick, or and I'll just go straight to it. But definitely having all your samples organized does speed it up, so that way you're not going by name and then trying to figure out whether it was a kick or a snare. I feel like that really does help, especially if you separate stuff like 808s, 8-bit kicks, and acoustic kicks and stuff like that.
Yeah, and what I can do is, we can take kind of screenshots of just kind of how we have our folder structures, and we can put it in the show notes. But it's going to be different for everybody, so you'll kind of have to just arrange stuff, whatever makes most sense to you. But at least if you can get a couple examples of ideas, it might, it might spark an idea for how you want to do it.
Of course. And then also talking about organizing, doing your own templates for your DAW, especially when they're like related to your workflow, it makes a huge difference. I remember after a while, I slowly made my opening template for FL, which is just simply has like buses for like synths, chords, bass, drums, and stuff like that. And then my sidechain buses, my pre-master, my reference track, and stuff like that. And then I was using that for many years, and once I started using Ableton a bit more, I basically translated that over to Ableton, and the same thing to Pro Tools. And we can definitely have those templates as like zip files or something up on the show notes, that way you guys get to try it out, mess around with it until you find what works for you. But basically what we're trying to say here is just make sure that you stay organized, but you also do what works for you rather than what works for someone else, because every person is different.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a living thing, right? Like your process is going to change over time. So, with me, the way I built my template out years ago, it's evolved since then as I've, picked up new practices and everything. So, but yeah, just being able to jump into a project and not having to, route all your buses and set up all your sidechain and stuff, to have all that stuff already in place every single project you start, the amount of time you save just adds up like crazy. All right, so moving on from that, let's see here. So with keeping up with momentum, sometimes the hardest thing is just getting started. For me, a lot of times if I just, light a fire up under my own butt and say, just go to the studio, once I open up a project and just start jamming a little bit, like that's all it took. And then hours go by. So sometimes that hardest part is just getting yourself into the studio to get started. Everything can kind of flow from there.
Especially when you're busy, I feel like that's really hard. Like me, myself, I go to school and I work 3 jobs. And so I haven't released anything since July. So that's kind of, but every once in a while, like either I'll tell myself to start working on something, or you just feel something you just want to start making. Or another cool thing you can do is if you have other friends, whether it be just online or in person, just do like something like a producer challenge. That can actually really help spark your inspiration. I remember it was actually it was like days ago. So this guy called Composerly on YouTube, he made a video on how to sound like Owl City, and he's my favorite artist. And that's a meme between our friend group. So everyone's like, hey, so we watch the video and we're going to remix Fireflies. And then after we did that, I'm like, hey, I can actually make this into an original song and it's going to sound dope. But you probably wouldn't have thought of that if you didn't, actually go and do something like a producer challenge or, something like that. So I feel like that would be lots of help to get you started too.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen some of those producer challenges and stuff on like Reddit, like those subreddits for EDM production and stuff. Where they put these creative constraints on you that really force you to think outside of the box, and some cool stuff can come out of it. Let's see. Next thing I have here is setting specific goals and tasks. Instead of just saying like, oh, I want to finish whatever song I'm working on, if you actually make a detailed list of, oh, I need to, replace the kick, or I need to add a fill to this specific bar, or, when you can really get super granular and, write down the very specific things that need to be done, it just makes what you need to do a lot more actionable.
And even like big artists do that too. I remember seeing a post from Adam Young or Owl City, and it was like Twitter. He's like, these are the notes I take when I'm listening to my own song, and it's like, bring the guitar up more, do this, change the note for this. And I do that too. Sometimes I'll forget to write it down, but then you get back and you're like, oh, I remember I thought this could work, and then you try it out. It works, maybe it doesn't work, but unless you're setting specific goals, and you want to have goals that are also stuff that you can manage, you know. Another like kind of goal too you can have is say like, I want to have this song done by this day, or you know, this album done by this day or month, so that way you're like, okay, I need to finish this, and it'll definitely help motivate you. And when I was doing my Ocean Eyes reimagining, it was really hard because I'm like, you know, I don't know how to, you know, where to start. And all of a sudden I was like, well, I need to release it on 10-year anniversary, so boom, I have a date. I need to get all my stuff done before then. And it really does help, you know, get you running. Yeah,
you basically like reverse engineer from that end date. Like, how do I get everything done that I need to get by this date? And then you break that down into specific tasks that you need to do.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's another thing, you know, talking about giving yourself deadlines and whatnot. You know, I had an EP that I was just dragging on and on and on, you know, tweaking it constantly for the longest time. And then finally I just put it out there online on, you know, social media and everything, like a banner that actually had the release date. And, you know, just by putting it out there, I was like, that's the day, you know, I'm going to release it no matter what. And I was fiddling with it until that night before. And then when the day hit, you know, I let it be. So, yeah, I think setting public deadlines can definitely help in holding yourself accountable.
Yeah, and even if like in something else on our list is also like taking breaks, which you can still do if you're, depending on when your deadline is, sometimes you'll have time to take a break. And this is different from person to person. I know some people just don't work that way. But like for myself personally, I used to not take breaks. I would just be like, oh, I wonder how fast I can finish this song in. But then I realized like, well, if you let it be for like a week or so and you come back to it, you can realize that, oh, there's maybe too much white noise for this. There's maybe, you know, this or that. And after that week of waiting, I feel like you can get a way better mix that's more, you know, leveled out or balanced compared with when you first started doing it. Because if you have too much white noise, for example, or something like that, and you just get used to listening to it for hours on end, you get used to how loud it is. But then if you don't, like a week later, if you get back to it, you'll be like, oh, that's way too much white noise, because you're not used to it again. Yeah, for sure. I definitely like to sit on tracks for a while, you know, and then, like you say, like kind of come back to them with fresh ears after you haven't listened to it for like a week or whatever, and you might pick up on some things. So yeah, I'm definitely an advocate for just kind of sitting on tracks and listening on, you know, different speakers and stuff, you know, like, you know, the infamous car test, and listening on like laptop speakers and earbuds and, you know, like over ear headphones, like as many different, you know, types of speakers and headphones and stuff that you can listen to that you might just pick up on something, you know, that you don't hear in the studio or whatever. So see, if you have the money, I feel like it'd be a good investment to get like AirPods and whatever other headphones are popular. So that way you just be like, okay, I'm going to listen to them on these and listen on here. And you kind of see how they, like, if they sound good on what everyone's listening to, then I feel like it's going to sound good. But obviously you want to use something like studio monitors so you can be a bit more consistent, but then use like, you know, car speakers, AirPods, or whatever else you have around the house, to make sure it sounds good on those two. Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. Like, I mean, look how many people you see walking around with the AirPods in. So I don't own a pair. At least in the US. Yeah, I don't own a pair myself. But yeah, I mean, that's not a bad idea considering how many people are probably listening to their music on those, you know? Oh, for sure. And another thing we actually have on as my side of the list is focusing on structure of the song rather than adding like lots of elements and bells and whistles to like just one section. The way I typically work is so I don't get stuck just working on like just let's say a chorus for 7 weeks. Is I'll be like, okay, I got this kind of going. You can kind of tell how it's supposed to sound, and you go on from there. And then you're like, okay, I got the structure. And now that you got the structure, then you go like, okay, I'm going to add this. I'm going to add this. You know, I'm going to add this piano with distortion or this, or, you know, after that. And you layer it. But then you have, before that, you already have like the main gist of it. Like, here's the structure. Here's how it's going to flow. Here's what the essential sound is going to be. Obviously, you'll improve it, but that's kind of so that way in the future you have an idea of what you're going for. Yeah, that's on my list too. Like breaking out of the whole 8-bar loop thing, you know, where you can just listen to your 8-bar loop for
for hours and hours, and then next thing you know, you're tired of, your whatever your original idea was. So I try to get a pretty solid idea, like an 8-bar loop going, and then as soon as I can get into arrangement mode and just start, even if it's just duplicating that 8-bar loop across, several bars or whatever, and then just start kind of cutting things out and whatnot. But yeah, getting into arrangement mode as quickly as possible, and figuring out how the song can what's the word I'm thinking of,
like progress from there.
Yeah, like figuring out how the song can kind of how the song can progress, just from beginning to end.
But like a thing I feel like a lot of us kind of have an issue with when it comes to, again, that motivation is how we'll be motivated to not do music, in the sense, like, I know there's a lot of times when I will sit on my computer, I open FL, I instantly open Chrome, and I go on YouTube, and you just start watching that for hours and hours on end, and you never leave, and you're like, oh, it's been 5 hours, well, dang, or like going through Facebook or whatever else is going on, or like that you like to do. But I feel like I found something called Cold Turkey that's all together, COLDTURKEY. That's like a website on your computer, and then like an app on your phone. And it'll like prevent certain websites from like you being able to access them for whatever period of time you said. So like Facebook, Amazon, YouTube. And if you like buy the app, which isn't too expensive, like you can block applications on your computer. So if you just want to go play Apex or Overwatch for a long period of time, you can block those so that we can only concentrate on just working on, your music for that period of time that you're there. I feel like it helped me a lot, but I still get kind of lazy, so I'll sneak in a few Vine compilations here and there off YouTube. But it still helps me get that done.
Yeah, I know there's other apps and stuff similar to Cold Turkey that it'll like disconnect your network connection or something like that, so that you can focus on tasks and stuff.
See, that's like too extreme for me. So because like there's certain, so especially if you're learning out, like if you're starting to learn like what to do, like if like how to do this in Logic, how to do this in Ableton, you kind of want to go on the internet and find it out.
Sure, yeah.
Especially if you don't know anything you're doing at all.
But that's more in the...
If you have your internet connection is gone, then you're like, well, crap, I can't figure out how to route this in Ableton. Because sometimes it's not an experimenting thing, it's more of a technical thing where it's like, I don't know where this is in Ableton, so I got to look it up. I've had that issue so many times with FL.
Yeah,
start learning.
Yes, I mean, yeah, that's more in the learning phase. But when you actually need to put your head down and do work, I feel like it's good at those times.
Oh yeah, of course. And another thing we have too is to work on something every day, and it can be little things, but like have like a list, like we mentioned earlier. And it just, even if you spend like a whole day just mixing drums or doing like designing leads or something like that, it will still help you get more progress on the song, even if you derail from it. So let's say you're working on let's say it's pop track that you're doing, and you're like, well, I was supposed to be mixing vocals, but I had this really cool idea for the chorus. Then work on the chorus. You're still making progress. That's not an issue. It's just an issue when you're not working on the song. So like even if you're mixing, or like no matter what you're doing in the song, like if you're still making progress, it works. But if you can't get yourself to like get motivated into doing something, do something small inside there, whether it be like change some settings around to help sound something better. That's something I feel like I do more often now, and it kind of helps my workflow, especially when it comes to finishing songs when I'm like not working or I'm not at school.
Yeah, so just getting in the DAW kind of every day. Yeah,
basically, yeah. Because there's like the whole rule of like 1,000 to 2,000, 10,000 hours or something like that. You become like a professional at it. I kind of feel that this helps in that way. I know some of my roommates would just be working on just making like dubstep basses for a whole day. Like they won't do anything else, or they'll go on like Splice. That's another thing you could just do to be productive. Go on Splice, find some samples. I remember I spent 3 to 4 hours on Splice, and I spent like 600 credits on there just to get like kicks, snares, guitars, all that kind of stuff. And so that way, when you're working on a song, you don't have to look for it. You're like, oh, I need an 80s kick. I remember I found a cool 80s kick. You bring it in there and it's done. You don't have to go searching through like 500 different kick samples just to find the one kick that's going to work, because that's like 20 minutes of your life wasted, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I hear of guys, I don't really do this, but I hear of guys where they will have, you know, just a sound design session, and that's all they'll do in one session is just make sounds. And then they'll have another session where they just focus on, I mean, I do like, sometimes I'll just do mastering, like I'll master like 3 tracks in one session. So I do kind of break it up like that. But yeah, maybe like separating your sessions out by different tasks and whatnot, instead of jumping from, oh, I'm going to sound design a little, oh, I'm going to write a little, oh, I'm going to mix a little. You know what I mean?
Yeah. See, it's kind of weird because my sound design is more, I'll experiment with something, and then if I like it, then I'll just put it in. Like I know what I'm doing. It's just like I don't do something on purpose, if that makes sense. So like something I did yesterday, it was like I got a piano from Contact, and I added guitar rig on it. Like I passed it through an amplifier and I added reverb and delay, and so I was like, "Oh, that's a nice guitar." I'm like, "No, it's a piano." But I just mess around. Like no one would think to do something like that, and I just do it, and it works for the song. So I'm like, "Hey, you know." So I don't think me doing a sound design session would I benefit from much, but if your stuff is heavy into sound design, then it's definitely worth your time, of course.
I mean, yeah, you could argue having experimentation sessions or whatever, you know.
Well, of course, yeah.
But yeah, that's how you get unique, cool ideas, like you're saying, running a guitar amp through like a piano or something. Like that's how you get unique sounds, you know, by doing out of the box stuff like that.
See, that was actually on accident, because initially it was like a square wave lead, and my friend's like, you know, you should change that. It sounds too basic. It was a square wave lead going through like guitar rig, reverb, and the delay, the same presets. And he's like, it just sounds like an initialized preset from Serum. And I'm like, okay, fine. And so I was trying to open, I think it was like Harmor or Serum, but I accidentally hit Contact, and it instantly loaded with my Grandeur piano. I'm like, oh, this sounds cool. I'll keep that. I'll keep that. And he's like, it doesn't sound basic anymore. So I'm like, sweet. It all works.
Nice happy accident there, yeah.
Of course, you gotta go a la Bob Ross for this. And then another thing, actually, when you're doing stuff like that, for some people it works, some people it doesn't. But you either imagine someone's like watching your work, or just invite a friend over, whether they know music production or not. Because I know a lot of people, like a lot of my friends who don't know about it, they just watch me do it and they just really like it because they don't know like all the stuff that goes behind making a song. So that way it kind of keeps you motivated and trying to get it done. So, and if, depending on the kind of person you are, you might want to show off a bit. So you do something cool and you find out, oh, this works for the song, you know, and you get some progress done. But definitely consider that an option when you're not having that motivation with you.
Yeah, the only other things I have here, I got a couple more things. So I got used the shit out of reference tracks for everything, you know. I mean, as far as like getting your mix down right, or just like coming up with ideas, you know, seeing how, you know, one of your favorite artists is like doing drum fills, or how they're transitioning from one section to another section, you know, just using reference tracks, you know, when you get stuck or are really, you know, at any point in the production process.
See, I feel like reference tracks are actually more versatile than people think. Because when you think reference track, you're just using it to mix and master. The way I think about it is it can also help you find your sound. And we have a podcast episode of this coming up soon. But what I do, well, at least the way I like to think my style came about is by listening to different tracks I like from different artists, like my favorite tracks from that artist, and then pick out what I like about it and then mash it up with other stuff. So whether it be like Owl City's lyric style and some of his like composition stuff with like 4EN puppets, sound design, and then like Set This Guy's chord progressions, stuff like that, and you just mash them together and like, oh, it works. And then, you know, I feel like that's a great way to use reference tracks. And then when it comes to like mixing and mastering with reference tracks, you can have it set up so you have like a pre-master that goes to the master, and then a reference track that goes to the master. It's like all your tracks from your song go into the pre-master, and basically you master on that pre-master. So that way when you're switching between the reference track and your song, your mastering plugins aren't affecting the reference track. So like you can do something like that. Or if you have Ozone, I know they have I don't know if it was like standard elements or advanced, but you can import a reference track in there, and like it will automatically be like, oh, here's like what your sounds like, and here's what the reference track sounds like. We can have it kind of sound similar and you can like switch between them. And I feel like that's pretty convenient to do when you're using reference tracks.
Yeah, I use a plugin called Magic AB for referencing. So yeah, just another option. And just one more thing on reference tracks. I find that they're very useful for arrangements. So, you know, if you're trying to like get a track on a certain label or something, you can, you know, use references from that label to see how their arrangement's laid out. You know, like how long's the intro, how long's the breakdown, how long's the drop, you know, and so on.
See, so I actually personally don't agree on that because I feel like you end up putting boundaries. I know I used to do this a lot when I was younger, when I used to like big room. I honestly kind of despise me making big room back in the day. It's a good genre. I just didn't like what I made. But anyways, like I would be like, okay, the intro has to be 1 minute of just kick, and then another minute of just kick and snare, and then and then I would like have it just be on the grain. I'm like, it has to be exactly 128. It has to be exactly. It can't be 120. It can't be 125. And I feel like that kind of limits you because you're putting like these boundaries up. Like if you need to go if you want to go for a certain sound, then from a label, then yeah, probably try it. But like when it comes to structure, like if you're new to structure, then maybe yes. Like no, like that chorus is typically like 2 to 4 measures kind of, or something like that, rather than just like 1 measure or like 4 beats. So it's just, that's kind of how I'd see you using reference tracks for structure, but I wouldn't think of it in terms of like the intro is like 2 minutes and then the break is like 1 minute. You know, unless you're doing something like these drop starts at a minute, that's pretty typical, and I feel like that would be fine.
Yeah, I mean, with a lot of like progressive house labels and stuff, like it's typically 32 bar intros. I mean, sometimes it strays away from that, but I mean, yeah, there are some tried and true things that, you know, labels aren't going to sign a track that has an intro that's way too short for somebody to mix into, for instance. You know what I mean? And you don't have to like stick to one exact arrangement. Like, you know, look at a bunch of different tracks to see how their arrangement is, and then, you know, that can kind of give you some ideas of what you can do with your track.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so that's pretty much everything I have. I have one last thing here as far as just like, you know, if you're feeling kind of in a rut with what you're working on, is, you know, just to consume some other form of art. You know, watch a film, listen to different music, maybe even other genres of music than what you're working on. Watch a live set by an artist that you like. Spend some time with your friends. You know, just do other things that, you know, might bring you out of your element a bit, you know?
See, actually, so I was actually thinking about this the other day because I realized, and we kind of talk a bit more about this in the future with our How to Find Your Sound episode, but I feel like if let's say you only listen to EDM, right, and you only make EDM, if you go out of your comfort zone for a bit and find a genre that you might like, so in my case, it's punk, you can add those elements to your song. However, you have to be really passionate about it and like really like the genre. You know, I know some people really like jazz music and they like electronic stuff, so they make like, you know, electro swing or stuff like that. So I feel like definitely consuming other kinds of media is great, especially if it's different genres of music that are different to yours or what you're typically used to. And then like movies and stuff, like if you go through my Spotify songs, I have a mix of everything. I've got pop music, musicals, mostly EDM. I've got orchestral stuff, a lot of punk. I have everything in there because if it's something you like, it doesn't matter what genre it is. If it helps inspire your music in any way, shape, or form, then that's what's going to make you get to that next level with your music. And it's just the way I think about it, honestly.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, you're not going to make anything unique by just listening to one genre. You know, if you're pulling from a lot of different places of inspiration, you know, that's where you can kind of make something unique. So, all right, you got anything else? I think we might be able to wrap, you know, with all that.
Yep, sounds good to me.
All right, until next time. Thanks, guys.
See ya.
Don't forget to check out Producer Evolution on Facebook and Instagram, and at Producer Evo on Twitter. You can find the show notes for this and our other episodes, as well as our courses on producerevolution.com. See you next time.